If there was ever a season to tank and help Wemby, it was this one. One of the worst teams in the league at the All-Star break. Dead last in the West, tied for best odds at the #1 pick. Almost the worst offense, bottom 10 defense, worst shooting team in the NBA. But instead of tanking, Victor Wembanyama took a leap and his teammates followed. Huge jump on defense, up 7 spots in net rating. That might not seem huge, but it was the biggest improvement of any NBA team after All-Star. This team had wins over the Warriors, #1 OKC, the Suns, the Knicks, the Pelicans, and Denver trying to lock up the top seed. San Antonio won 7 of their last 11 games. Why? Now, instead of the best odds at #1, they're slated for the #5 pick in a weak draft. Well, if the basketball gods have any power, they will get #1 because when everyone else tanked, the Spurs said, screw that. But what chance do they actually have at #1? Well, there's a lot to break down in the Spurs offseason, starting with $24 million in cap space, and we will shop free agents. They also have a few exceptions for free agents, like the $8 million room exception or the $12.9 million mid-level if they use that cap space. Team needs shooting, especially off the bench, a long-term point guard solution for Wemby, and star talent. Assets in a trade? No team's got more first rounders outside of OKC. We'll do a deep dive on trades, but start with the draft. The Spurs have a 10.5% chance at #1. They also have the Raptors first if it's outside the top 6. Now, Toronto knew this and tanked hard to keep their pick, and they actually succeeded. Perhaps. Right now, they are slated at the #6 pick. But anything can happen. In fact, Tankathon has a draft simulator mathematically identical to the NBA draft. In the first simulation I did, Spurs pick #1 and the Raptors fall down. Lose that pick to the Spurs. Oh yes, baby, it can happen. The draft lottery started in 1985, and a team with the Spurs odds or worse has gotten #1 11 times. So the Spurs have that 10.5% chance. Every other team on this list had worse odds, but hit. So before we talk free agents, what should they do in the draft? Well, we find out where they actually picked May 12th. My simulations had them going as low as 7th, so a lot can happen. But at #1, they should select Caitlin Clark. Just kidding. Zachary Rizachet, small forward from France. Yes, back-to-back French #1 picks. I know the Spurs need an elite point guard, but there isn't one in this draft. But they were also dead last in three-point shooting for like half the year. Rizachet is a 3 and D player at 6'8", who is a connector on offense, the exact player San Antonio looks for. He's also barely 19 years old, so they like the youth. And in France right now, he is playing at a high level, guarding 1 through 4, making 39% of his threes. They can get a veteran point guard later in the offseason, but realistically, they'll pick around 5 for another guard like Reed Shepherd, Stephon Castle, Rob Dillingham, or Nikola Topic. Or just draft Bronny. What nickname we going with? Wembanyama? Wembranyama? But before trades, let's talk free agency. So the Spurs can have up to $25 million in cap space. That's not much because a max contract starts at $40 million for a real vet. But it's a weak star free agent class anyway. I mean, here's a look at who's available. These stars are LeBron, PG, and James Harden? Come on. Pascal and Clay will probably stay with their teams. Then, realistic additions below that. My first target, Tyus Jones, the older brother of current point guard Trey Jones. But Tyus is a stronger, more reliable option. He was Ja Morant's backup, then a starter in DC. Had the best assist to turnover ratio 4 straight years. Then he was #5 this year as a starter. But the dream target in free agency would be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. After winning 2 rings with the Lakers and Nuggets, maybe KCP wants to get paid on a final contract at 31 years old. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams last year, so he fits perfect with great defense. Now, OG Anunoby would be even better, especially for the timeline, but he's staying in New York. So off the bench, Luke Kennard. He has never shot under 40% from 3, and the Spurs were the 20th worst bench shooting team. So it's a cheap but effective option. Now, what about trades? This is the #1 way to improve the team fast. The Spurs have so many draft picks, they can make any trade they want. Now, along with their own first-round picks, they've got 2 unprotected Hawks picks, unprotected swaps from Atlanta and Dallas, top 1 protected from Boston, and protected first from Chicago, Charlotte, and Toronto. And if the Raptors do end up keeping their pick, it just rolls right over into next year's better draft anyway. All this means that they can either trade for a star or get really good now and still benefit from the draft. Like, if the Spurs make the playoffs next year, they could still have 2 lottery picks from the Hawks and the Raptors. It's almost like they planned for Wemby years in advance. But with all this ammunition, who should they target? Well, we all know Trae Young has been rumored, but he is a horrible fit. I do not see this happening. Yes, he can throw lobs to Wemby, but a reputation as ball dominant and stubborn in the locker room, the Spurs don't like those types of players. Instead, I think a better fit is Darius Garland. So the Spurs get Darius for Keldon Johnson, Devontae Graham, and 5 first-round picks. Now, before the Spurs fans freak out, 3 of those picks are protected, 2 are in the Week 2024 draft, so it's basically like 2 Spurs picks. And if the plan is to be competitive by then, who cares if Cleveland's got him? So the Cavs move on from Garland because his fit with Donovan Mitchell has been shaky. Garland is a much better player as the lone playmaker and would impact San Antonio. The Cavs get 2 support players, but could flip all these picks for an upgrade right away. Now, another amazing trade could be Alex Caruso, but how expensive is he? I mean, the Bulls asked the Warriors for Jonathan Kuminga, so the Dubs said no? Is that like 3 first-round picks, 3 picks, and a good young player? I think the Spurs' best offer is Caruso for Jeremy Sohan, Julian Sampeni, and 3 first-round picks. Again, 2 of them are protected weak picks, and 1 good pick, the Spurs 2026. But don't sleep on Sohan. The man can't play point guard, but he is a dog, especially on defense, and has an eye for passing. But there is one big quote from Brian Windhorst about this offseason. He said the Spurs aren't looking to make any big moves/trades this summer and will instead focus on the 2025 draft. No moves in the 2025 draft. Do you know what that means? That means they tank for 2025. Sorry, Victor Wembanyama fans. Expect another season like this one. Wemby's great, but the team sucks. On purpose. ESPN loves to say that Wemby's getting impatient, but he has no choice. Dude's under contract 3 more years, but if the Spurs still have that magic touch, he will be competing for titles soon. Just not very soon. But Victor Wembanyama was supposed to be great, so when people look back, they'll say, oh, of course he won Rookie of the Year. But no, it was a really tough rookie season, especially at the beginning. So I did a deep dive on Wemby's first year.